"Can I have one too?" A stranger's silent plea for a hug changed everything in just moments. Elias Moore, 42 years old, tall, with tired hazel eyes and graying stubble on his jaw, walked the edge of Arbor Park like he did every Friday. He wore a dark green wool coat frayed at the sleeves, and black corduroy pants. His tan skin had dulled with the weight of grief he carried in silence. People passed by him, but no one really saw him. He wasn't homeless, he wasn't rich, he was just alone. A man with a respectable job and no one to share dinner with. His silence wasn't choice, it was consequence. Elias hadn't hugged anyone in years. He told himself he didn't need it, but even the strongest walls crack under silence. On this particular day, the sun shone golden through autumn leaves, but he felt colder than ever. Elias had just sat down on a metal bench near the fountain when he heard a burst of laughter. His eyes shifted. A young girl, around 6 years old, skipped in circles around her mother. The girl had curly auburn hair tied into 2 bouncy puffs and wore a bright yellow coat with pink mittens dangling from the sleeves. Her cheeks were rosy from the breeze, and her green eyes sparkled with life. Her mother, a woman in her mid-30s with caramel-brown skin and curly shoulder-length hair, chuckled softly as she fixed the scarf around the girl's neck. "Mommy, do you love me this much?" The little girl stretched her arms as wide as she could. "Even more than that, Lena," the mother replied warmly. Then Lena wrapped her arms tightly around her mother in a big, lingering hug. Elias felt something stir in his chest. Elias tried to look away. He told himself it was none of his business, but the simple display of affection hit something inside him, a memory too distant to hold. His own childhood had been filled with silence and slammed doors. As an adult, he'd buried himself in his work. After his mother's passing, the last thread of warmth in his life had vanished. No one ever hugged him again, not out of cruelty, but absence. He watched Lena bury her face in her mother's coat, giggling, and Claire, the mother, leaned down and kissed her head. That's when Elias felt his vision blur, not from cold but something else. Without fully realizing it, Elias rose from the bench. His legs moved before his brain could stop them. He wasn't sure what he intended, only that something in him needed to be near that warmth. As he approached, Lena looked up and smiled brightly. "Hi," she chirped. Claire glanced up cautiously but didn't move away. Elias nodded gently, hands buried in his coat pockets. "Sorry, I just saw your little girl hugging you," and his voice cracked. Claire's expression softened. She saw the pain etched into his face, the kind that doesn't show up overnight. Elias looked down at Lena, who now clutched her mother's leg. I don't mean to be strange. He exhaled. "That hug, it reminded me of something I think I forgot how to feel." Claire, still unsure, simply listened. Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. Would it be okay if I had one too?" He glanced at Claire, ashamed of what he asked, but more afraid of never asking at all. It wasn't about a child's hug. It was about any hug, human connection, a bridge back to something lost. Claire studied Elias's face, truly looked at him. She didn't see a threat. She saw a broken man who wasn't asking for pity, only for a moment of humanity. She bent down to Lena and whispered something. The girl turned to Elias, then walked slowly toward him. "You look like you need a hug," she said sweetly. And without hesitation she wrapped her arms around his leg, then his waist. Elias stood frozen for a moment, then sank to his knees and returned the hug gently, careful not to squeeze too tight. His eyes shut. He didn't cry out loud, but tears came anyway. Passers-by slowed down. A jogger stopped mid-stride. A couple walking their dog turned to watch. The park, bustling a moment ago, seemed to hush. A hug, a simple, honest hug, had captured everyone's attention. There was no applause, no gasps, just quiet understanding. Claire approached and gently placed her hand on Elias's shoulder. "Sometimes we all need someone to remind us we're still human," she said softly. As Elias stood, wiping his face with the back of his sleeve, a feeling unlike anything he had known in years settled in his chest. It wasn't just gratitude. It was remembrance. He remembered his younger sister, who used to hug him tight during thunderstorms. He remembered the way his mother held him after his first heartbreak. Those memories had become ghosts, flickering quietly in the back of his mind, but now they had form again. Claire watched him with kindness. "You reminded me today," Elias said softly, "that love isn't always loud. Sometimes it just needs to be seen." The three of them sat on the bench together. Lena munched on animal crackers while Claire and Elias talked. Not about anything dramatic, just life. He told her he worked at a printing warehouse, that his parents had both passed, that he never married. Claire shared that she was a part-time teacher, a single mother since Lena was a baby. Life had been tight, but Lena made it brighter. The simplicity of the exchange, the openness between two strangers, felt almost sacred. It was what Elias needed, and maybe Claire too. A conversation not driven by need, but connection. Before Claire stood to leave, she handed Elias a small notepad from her purse. In case you ever need someone to talk to again. No expectations. Elias hesitated. You don't owe me anything, Claire smiled. That's not the point. Maybe the world needs less owing and more offering. He looked at the number scribbled in neat handwriting. His hand shook slightly as he folded it and placed it carefully in his coat pocket. No one's offered me anything in a long time, he admitted. Claire just nodded and said, now someone has. Elias walked home differently that day. The streets were the same, the sounds, the faces, the endless rhythm of a city surviving itself, but something had shifted inside him. He didn't stop for coffee like usual. He didn't scroll his phone while waiting at the crosswalk. He just walked and breathed. As if for the first time the world had exhaled with him, he found himself smiling quietly, not out of joy necessarily, but peace. A new space had opened in him, small but unmistakable, and it had all begun with a hug from a child who didn't even know his last name. That night, Elias did something he hadn't done in decades. He opened a box in his closet filled with unsent letters. Some were addressed to no one, others to his parents, long gone. Many were written during nights of heavy silence. He took a pen and added a new one. This one wasn't filled with sorrow, it was simple. Dear Lena, he wrote, thank you for reminding me what warmth feels like. He tucked it into the same box, smiled, and turned out the light. Over the next few days, Elias noticed small changes. He greeted his coworkers first. He asked the grocery clerk how her day was going. He said thank you, louder than usual. None of this made him someone new, but it reminded him that connection wasn't impossible. Claire and Lena didn't call. They didn't need to. The hug lingered in his mind like a melody. Whenever he felt low, he closed his eyes and remembered Lena's arms wrapping around him with no hesitation. It was, he realized, the most honest moment he'd had in years. Claire tucked Lena into bed, running her fingers through her daughter's curls. Why did the man cry, Mommy? Lena asked innocently. Claire paused. Because sometimes grown-ups forget they're allowed to feel. You helped him remember. Lena thought about this, then smiled. I'm glad I hugged him. He needed it. Claire kissed her forehead. So did we. They didn't talk about it much again, but both mother and daughter felt the weight of that day in their bones, a memory that warmed, not haunted. A week later, Elias hesitated for over 5 minutes before texting the number Claire had given him. I hope you're both doing well, thank you again for everything. He didn't expect a reply, but 5 minutes later his phone buzzed. Lena says hi, she asked if you smiled today. That was it, simple. But Elias laughed, a sound even he hadn't heard from himself in a long time. He texted back, I did. Tell her it's because of her. They met again a few weeks later, this time at a small coffee shop near Claire's apartment. Lena sipped hot cocoa with whipped cream on her nose. Elias brought her a sticker book. Claire brought laughter. It wasn't a reunion, it was an evolution. Strangers becoming friends, trust taking shape. They didn't talk about that first hug, they didn't need to. It had already said everything. In time, Elias began seeing a counselor. It wasn't something he advertised. But the moment with Claire and Lena had awakened a part of him willing to try. He started painting again. Something he used to do in college, abstract shapes, moods in color. It helped him process. Healing wasn't immediate, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it began not with therapy or medication or deep conversations, but with a child who gave her love freely, and a mother who understood the quiet weight of sorrow. Lena brought the moment up again one spring morning while walking with her mother. Mom, do you think that man is okay now? Claire smiled. I think he's better than he was because of you, Lena nodded. That makes me feel happy in my chest. That feeling, Claire whispered, is what love does when we give it away. The hug wasn't just a physical act. It was a message. You're not invisible. You matter. You're allowed to hurt and still be loved. And it had come from the least likely place. A little girl with a yellow coat, pink mittens, and no agenda but kindness. That single moment reminded Elias that sometimes what the world needs isn't more money, more answers or more distractions, but presence, openness, a hand or even a small pair of arms reaching out without fear. Months later, Elias joined Claire and Lena at a community volunteer day. They handed out food, picked up litter, and laughed like old friends. As the day ended, Lena turned to him. Can I hug you again? Elias bent down, arms open. Always, as they embraced, someone walking by smiled and whispered, what a beautiful family. No one corrected them, and maybe they didn't need to. If this story moved you, inspired you, or reminded you of the simple power of kindness, make sure to subscribe for more powerful human stories like this.